Have you ever wondered why some products just explode onto the scene with a ton of excitement, while others, maybe even better ones, just fizzle out? Well, it turns out the difference often isn't about the product itself, but the process behind it. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a system that's all about replacing that guesswork with predictable, solid results. It's called the product launch formula.
So here's what we've got on tap. We're going to kick things off by talking about a really common problem called hope marketing. Then, of course, we'll introduce the solution, the product launch formula itself. After that, we'll get into the nuts and bolts, the 3 core components, the 4 phases of a launch, and the psychology behind why this thing actually works so well. And we'll wrap it all up with the key lessons you can take away.
All right, so before we can really appreciate why the product launch formula is such a game changer, we first have to get a handle on the problem it was designed to fix. And honestly, it's a concept that a lot of creators and businesses are probably a little too familiar with.
And that problem is something the source material calls hope marketing. Picture this. You spend months, maybe even years, pouring your heart and soul into creating something amazing. You perfect every detail. Then you release it to the world and just hope. You just cross your fingers and hope people show up and buy it. It's a strategy that's just packed with uncertainty, and it almost always leads to a ton of stress and, unfortunately, disappointment.
And this slide really lays out the difference, doesn't it? On one side, you've got hope marketing, which is all about guesswork, chance, and a lot of stress. But on the other side, you have the product launch formula. It's about structure, getting feedback, and building real engagement and momentum. It's a huge shift in thinking, from just hoping for a great result to actually engineering.
Okay, so if hope isn't a strategy, what is? Let's dive in and properly introduce the system that was created to take all that guesswork out of the equation and put a clear, repeatable process in its place. This is the product launch formula, or PLF for short. And what it does is it basically flips the traditional model completely on its head. See, instead of creating a product and then trying to find customers, PLF is all about building up anticipation, engagement, and demand before your product is even available to buy. You're involving your audience from the get-go, letting that demand build up organically.
Now, before we walk through the step-by-step blueprint of a launch, we need to open up the toolkit. We've got to understand the fundamental components the system is built on. Think of these as the absolute essential building blocks for the whole thing.
And it's surprisingly simple, really. The entire system is built on just 3 core components, and they all work together to make the launch happen. Those 3 components are sequences, storytelling, and mental triggers. Sequences give you the structure, storytelling creates that crucial connection, and mental triggers help guide people to make a decision. So let's take a quick look at each one.
First up, we have sequences. This is the backbone, the structure of the launch. Instead of just one big, aggressive sales pitch, the PLF uses a really carefully planned series of messages. Things like emails or videos. Each piece of content builds on the one before it, so you're gradually creating interest and momentum over time, not just trying to force a decision right out of the gate. Next up is storytelling, and honestly, this is the heart of the whole formula. We're all wired for stories, right? So instead of just rattling off a boring list of features and benefits, PLF uses real stories to build trust and forge a genuine emotional connection. It's about helping people see themselves in the journey so they can really feel the transformation your product offers. And the third piece of the puzzle is mental triggers. Now, these are basically just psychological drivers that we all have that influence how we make decisions. The formula uses these ethically. Things like building authority by teaching something valuable, or using scarcity by having a deadline to buy. It's all designed to encourage people to engage and to take action when the time is right.
Okay, so we've got our toolkit: sequences, storytelling, and mental triggers. The big question is, how do we actually put them all together? Well, that brings us to the blueprint, the 4 distinct phases of a product launch.
The entire process is broken down into 4 clear phases. You've got the pre-launch, then the pre-launch, then the actual launch itself, and finally, the post-launch. Each stage has a specific job and flows right into the next.
And you can see how this all stacks up, right? The pre-launch is all about just planting a seed of curiosity and starting a conversation. Then, in the pre-launch, you deliver real value, you teach something, you establish your authority. So by the time you get to the actual launch, your audience is already warmed up, engaged, and ready to hear your offer. And it doesn't stop there. The post-launch is all about strengthening those relationships for the long haul with both buyers and non-buyers.
So this process looks pretty solid on paper, but why is it so effective in the real world? What's the secret sauce here? Well, it all comes down to the way it taps into some really basic human psychology.
The reason it works so well is because it's not about pressure, it's about conversation. Your potential customers feel like they're part of the process, not just a target for a sales pitch. Because you're involving them so early, you get to hear their questions and objections, and you can address them before you even ask for the sale. And maybe the biggest win of all, you get to validate that people actually want what you're creating long before you go all in.
Yeah, this quote from the source material really hits the nail on the head. It says, instead of convincing strangers, PLF allows prospects to self-qualify through engagement. The whole point isn't to twist someone's arm. It's to create an environment where the right people can learn, get involved, and basically raise their own hand and say, hey, this is for me. They choose to be there, which makes the sale feel like the most natural thing in the world.
All right, as we start to wrap this up, let's just boil everything down to a few key lessons. If you only take away a couple of things from this whole breakdown, make it these.
First, the big idea here is replacing guesswork with structure. That's it. Second, always remember that real engagement has to happen before you ever ask for a sale. And third, a real conversation with your audience will beat a one-way sales pitch every single time.
And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. No matter what you do, whether an entrepreneur, a creator, an artist, whatever, just think about this. How could shifting from hope to structure, from just persuading to having a real dialogue, how could that change the game for your very next project?